Welcome to the Inside Story. Today I'm joined by Leonardo Blair from the Christian Post. How you doing today?
I'm good, Billy. Thank you again for having me on the show.
Well, thanks for coming on. You recently did a very interesting article on an addiction recovery program out in Brooklyn, New York. It's a well-known program, but you get into the history and sort of the background on it. Before we sort of get into your visit there and what you saw and observed, tell us a little bit about the program.
This program is the Brooklyn Adult and Teen Challenge that was started in 1958 by David Wilkerson. Most people will know him as the founder of Times Square Church in Manhattan and the author of the best selling book, The Cross and the Switchblade, which was made into a movie. The program, in essence, is an addiction recovery program that teaches that Jesus is stronger than addiction and actually uses the gospel to help addicts recover.
Well, and this has been, as you said, going on for decades since 1958. And obviously, if a ministry lasts that long, the assumption is something really good is happening with that ministry. There's a positive impact. How did David Wilkerson? Let's just go there for a moment. How did he get into the ministry of helping addicts?
Well, it's a really, really powerful story, backstory with this ministry. So in early 1958, Wilkerson said he felt called by God to come to New York City to minister to gangs after he saw a photograph of seven teenage gang members in Life magazine. These teens were being prosecuted for the murder of a crippled boy named Michael Farmer. And all of them except one were eventually convicted of the murder. But before their convictions, Wilkerson, who was really, when he came to New York City, got this vision, was a small town preacher from Pennsylvania. He traveled to the courthouse here in New York City where the teenagers were being tried, and tried to get the judge to allow him to minister to the teenagers, but the judge wasn't having it. The judge threw him out. And there's this really famous photo of Wilkerson at the courthouse that was published in local papers. And he was standing there with his Bible at the courthouse, and he became known as the Bible preacher who interrupted the gang trial. And that whole thing really left him embarrassed. Yeah, I think he went back to Pennsylvania, but I think the Lord really worked to speak to his heart, and with the help of his younger brother Don Wilkerson, he eventually came back to the city in 1958, and he started a street ministry focused on young drug addicts and gang members, and that work eventually evolved into a teen challenge.
It's amazing how God does things in people's lives, and the moments that are embarrassing or chaotic end up being these powerful moments that, in this case, have created an organization, Teen Challenge, that has persisted again for decades. How large is Teen Challenge today?
It's now a global organization, a global movement, I would say, because most of the teen challenge houses or the teen challenge operations, they are independently run, but they do have to follow a certain curriculum and all of that. And there are about 1,400 teen challenge centers around the world with more than 35,000 beds, that's dedicated to individuals who are seeking freedom from addiction and other life controlling issues through the power of faith in Jesus Christ.
Now, you took a tour of this Teen Challenge house out in Brooklyn. What did you see? What did you experience?
You know, I was really impressed by the the house itself. It's in a very historic part of Brooklyn, the Clinton Hill Historic District. But they had just recently completed a multi-year sort of renovation, retrofitting of the building itself, and so most of the building inside is pretty new. The rooms where the students, as they call them, go, they're pretty clean. The space is well organized. The facility has almost everything that you would need. And here's the thing, uh, they they operate completely independently from any sort of government assistance. So all the funds that they get, they use those funds to provide the care, the guidance to these individuals wanting to get free from addiction, free of cost.
Wow, that is that's incredible. I'm going to ask the question. I brought this up. Obviously, it must be effective, but how effective has it been? What are some of the things they've seen in terms of their impact that has allowed them to continue operating for as long as they have?
Yeah, there's a lot in terms of it's not an easy program. Number one, so about 40% of the people that start the program actually complete it. And one of the things I gathered from Paul Burke, who is the director of the program and also a graduate of the program, is that if someone comes into the program and they haven't really hit rock bottom, like they haven't really run out of options, it's likely that these individuals will feel like, okay, they don't have to stay, because nobody's is forced to stay in a program to get better, right? So they have a choice. A lot of the people who actually go through that 1 year program and really stick to the biblical principles that they teach of how to live a better life and how to use the power of Christ to overcome that addiction daily are the people who are the students who really there's no other hope for them, and so they are forced to really apply the principles, and they tend to be successful. And the recidivism rate for those graduates, the people who complete the program, it's pretty low. So that speaks very highly of the program. If people want who if people commit to the principles that are shared with them in the program.
Well, you also had a chance to talk to some of the people who have been impacted directly by the program. What did they tell you about their experience?
I keep mentioning Paul Burke, who is the director, and there are other individuals who I spoke with. Their narratives really speak to the the no options sort of situation that I mentioned earlier. They had no option but to stick to the program, and when they came into the program, they had already hit rock bottom, right? And so they were in survival mode. And Paul Burke, I mean, his story is just so amazing, so compelling. You know how God turned his life around. He told me that he would probably have been dead or in jail if he had not gotten help from Teen Challenge, and the way God turned his life around from being a really really troubled drug addict into now leading this amazing ministry with a wife and children. Just setting an example. I mean, it's really amazing.
So, final question for you. Why do you think programs like this, especially now where we are in our culture, are so essential?
I think it offers an alternative for people who may not necessarily want to, um, you know, use drugs to help them to overcome a drug addiction, who may not want to follow a secular pattern, and I think it gives especially Christian organizations the opportunity to really demonstrate the power of Christ, and those people who actually try that program, they can demonstrate that, listen, God is still alive, God is still able, and he can give you freedom even from drug addiction as long as you believe it. And listen, there's a quote that David Wilkerson, off David Wilkerson, that's in one of the rooms in the Nick Cruz assembly room in the building, and it basically says, "Certainly, we cannot claim a magical cure for addiction. The devil hides in the needle, the pills, and the powder. It's so deadly strong that any such claim would be foolish. All we can say is that we have found a power that captures a person more strongly than narcotics, but he captures only to liberate." And uh that's the promise of the word. Nobody's forced to believe in Jesus, nobody's forced to read the word or anything like that. This is just another way that is being offered to the world. If you are willing to abide by the principles of scripture, you can find freedom, you can find liberation.
Well, Leo, I appreciate your time today breaking this story down. People can read it in the description. We'll have a link to it, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the Inside Story. Appreciate your time today.
Anytime, Billy.